Welcome, folks. I am Jabby Kaway, joined by Chara Kirk.
What's up?
We're looking at the film theorists' film theory, what everyone got wrong about Squid Game.
Squid Game.
There's a link in the description below for the video we're about to watch. You can click on that, give the original an upvote, and subscribe to them from there. If you haven't already, please subscribe here as well, bell icon, all notifications, and vote this up to let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. All right, let's jump into this. Here we go.
You're thrown into a series of 6 mystery games with 400 other players. A pot of $44 million is on the line. But more importantly, if you lose, you die.
You die.
Other channels have covered the tactics to winning the specific games. And honestly, the show itself does a pretty darn good job of showing you creative solutions to its various puzzles. But today, we're gonna help you survive when you're going in blind, just like the contestants. This is how to survive the Squid Game.
Oh.
Mild spoiler warning for some of the games and strategies. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's brought to you by our totally not made up sponsor for today's episode, USB Power Banks. Are you an off-duty police officer who went out of your way to infiltrate a secret society running a brutal death game in the hopes of discovering a long-lost family member? If so, a USB Power Bank is the product for you. This device fits into your pocket, is smaller than a cell phone, and can keep your camera powered for days on end, so that when you do finally perform a miraculous escape from Death Game Island, you have more than a few minutes of video and a 50-word notepad file to show for your efforts.
Yes.
USB Power Banks. Seriously, what were you thinking? Anyway, I finally got around to watching Squid Game, along with most of the rest of the US at this point, and I loved the series. It was tense, it was clever, it was also completely misunderstood by everyone watching it. You see, the thing is being called the next Hunger Games, the new Battle Royale, the cinematic version of Fall Guys. The thing is, these comparisons really miss the mark because fundamentally, this isn't how the games in the show work. And if you're one of the people making that comparison, it's likely gonna get you killed. Don't worry, most of the characters in the series fell into the same trap, and well, let's just say it didn't end well for them. But have no fear, MatPat is here. By the time you're done with this video, you'll understand the real way to survive the 6 rounds of Playground games, regardless of what individual challenges you're faced with. So the next time some random guy in a subway offers you 100,000 won to flip his paper square, or when season 2 finally launches, because let's face it, this smash hit is absolutely getting itself a sequel, you'll be prepared to survive the squid. So pay attention. The information today might just save your life and make you rich in the process.
Let's
For the 10 of
see.
you out there who still haven't watched Squid Game, here's the briefest of summaries just so you get through today's theory. Gion is a down on his luck gambler who's in dire need of some cash. He's got loan sharks after him, his mother can't afford her surgery, and on top of that, he's gonna lose custody of his daughter because he can't afford to pay a lawyer. Desperate, he agrees to play the highest stakes game imaginable. He's whisked away to a remote island with over 400 other competitors where, in order to win, they have to survive 6 different children's games. Some of them are pass-fail challenges like red light, green light, where failure results in execution. Others are player versus player games like tug of war, where the losing team falls to their death. As for why you'd possibly want to risk your life in a game like this, well, each death adds 100 million won to the prize pool. 100 million won! Can you believe that? Now all of you are scrambling to Google for that conversion rate. Don't worry, I did it too when I was watching the show, and so did everyone else based on the Google Trends search
Yep.
results for
Yeah.
won to US dollar conversion. It actually amounts to about $84,000 per death. Considering that there are 456 contestants, you're talking about a potential prize pool of $38 million. But be warned, once you start playing, you're not allowed to stop playing. And those who do refuse to play have to worry about clause number 2.
Consent Form Clause 2. A player who refuses to play will be eliminated.
When they say elimination, they mean a bullet and your head intersecting in an unpleasant way. The only way out once the games have started is...
Consent Form Clause 3. If all of the players agree to stop playing, the games are allowed to end.
Why is he using the dub version?
It's so weird to
God,
listen to the
every
dub.
bit as awful as I anticipated it would be.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched the show in its native tongue, you haven't watched the show. Truly, it feels fundamentally different. The acting feels different. Every time I've watched something dubbed, the only time I've made an exception for that was Dragon Ball Z. But like, generally speaking, I like to watch it in its native tongue, if possible. If possible.
That's actually a mistranslation, by the way. It's if the majority of players vote to end the game. That's why subs are always better than dubs. So anyway, with the rules laid out, let's get to the strategy. Like I mentioned before, the players don't know what games they're gonna be playing until they get to the Death Island. If they're observant, they can piece together clues based on the wall decorations around them, but still, it's not gonna give them much time to prepare or practice. And so that's what we're gonna assume
I love the
today, that
animation in
we've
this.
just signed up and have no idea what's in store for us. In this massive game of death, what should our general strategies be? First, we shouldn't assume that just because people are dying, that this is a death game, because it's not. The rules state,
Everyone here will participate in 6 different games. Those who win all 6 games will receive
Right.
a handsome cash prize.
If you survive, you win. And sure, while each death boosts the pot, it's not like a Battle Royale or Hunger Games scenario where there can only be one left standing. Here, there can be more than one winner, and that's important. It means that the survival of one person, or even a group of people, is not directly negative to your personal survival.
That's what I thought as well, you know,
Okay.
because of what they said. They never specifically said that it would have to be one winner, but the way it came down to it at the end, when they got to the Squid Game, there were only 2 contestants left. And so I wonder, that's why I've always wondered, like, what if people just kind of teamed up together to make sure that they made it through to the end somehow?
Well, we didn't see that version of the game play out. And also, when there were 3 of them at the table with the triangle, they were all given a knife. I don't know what would have happened if, you know, our main character and the girl, the North Korean girl, teamed up to fight his best friend with the glasses. I can't remember anybody's name in the show. Do we know if that would have been allowed? Like, just because they didn't say it doesn't mean that means it's true.
Sure, yeah, but like I guess there are different loopholes and stuff, right? So there are different ways that you can play the game, and it's like the game completely changed once they realized that you could kill another contestant without any punishment, right? Because
Right.
in the beginning they weren't doing that, and then once the big bully guy realized like, oh hey, I can actually kill someone and get more money and
Yeah.
eliminate the competition, that's when it got really dangerous. And so I feel like they gave the knife as kind of, it's like bait. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, what will you do? What is human nature?
Right.
Are you going to try and kill the weak? Are you going to try and kill the competition? Or are you just going to hold on to it and not do anything? It's all down to choice.
Which then opens up the question, should you be sabotaging your fellow players in order to boost the prize pot and advance yourself? This is a dilemma that actually pops up repeatedly throughout the series. In the second game, Song-woo figures out the game before anyone else does, punching a shape out of a fragile honeycomb candy. Knowing this, he immediately chooses the easiest shape and then encourages the other players on his team to split up, getting them to take shapes that are much more difficult and much more likely to lead to their elimination. Obviously, there's all kinds of
Space.
moral and ethical reasons why you shouldn't intentionally try to kill other people, but what Song-woo does here in Game 2 is one of the stupidest moves that we see anyone make across the entire series. The people he chooses to sabotage are people that have agreed to team up with him. The players who, in the event of a fight, are more likely to have his back as opposed to, say, planting a knife between his shoulder blades. Oh wait, that's exactly what we see happen. They come to his rescue the following night when everyone tries killing each other. But teaming up isn't just about keeping people in your personal alliance safe. Keeping more players in the game for longer means more chances for other people to help you survive. Again, take
Right.
that honeycomb game as the example. In it, players are given a needle to punch out their shape, which is fine for easy shapes like a triangle, but not very effective for the more fragile shapes like the umbrella or star. However, one person in the group, our hero Gian, out of desperation comes up with a completely out-of-the-box strategy, ignoring the needle entirely and licking the candy so the shape can pop out. This, in turn, saves multiple other contestants who copy the strategy.
With his best friend misleading him, while it is definitely dumb, I agree with him. It was the dumbest move possible, but it was a necessary thing for the plot in order to create suspense. Without him doing that, if he helped his friend out, it's like, no, we should all go to the triangle because I know exactly what this game is.
Right.
If he did that, there would be no suspense in the show. All of it is like the ticking time bomb of like, he's gonna make it out hopefully unscathed at the last possible second. So it gets you anxious.
Right, yeah. And also it's a great character point as well, because we know exactly who Sang-woo is. He is that guy who is going to do whatever it takes to win the game, even if that means, you know, potentially killing the people who would be on his team.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you needed that in order to increase the suspense of the show.
Sure.
People who otherwise would have been eliminated just like the rest. That's why it's stupid when the players try to kill each other between games 2 and 3, because these are men whose lives were saved by the person that they're now attempting to eliminate. You know what they say, two
True.
heads are better than one, so 50 heads should be even better, and 400 heads is even better than that. It's why the internet hive mind is so good at solving puzzles. Everyone brings their own experiences and expertise to the table. So
Yeah.
let's just say
But
that
you're not
you
thinking about that in the
I don't
moment.
know, faced with
Yeah.
a challenge that involves jumping across panels of glass, with 50% of those panels being tempered and safe to stand on. Well, it would be really helpful if the group had someone who is a glass expert that could tell the difference between tempered and untempered glass. Oh wait, that's exactly what happens. Except instead of sharing his knowledge, the glass expert hides this fact until the end, after practically all the other players have died. This is stupid, not just from a statistical angle, but also from a strategic one, considering that most of the games are timed. Everyone else, realizing that they're just blindly guessing on a coin flip that could cost them their life, wastes time. Every second that you're hiding your knowledge is a second that the group isn't making progress. As a result,
Right.
our glassmaker, despite having the knowledge that should have kept him alive through this challenge, ultimately dies because he runs out of time.
I think that when you're faced in a situation like that, you end up just becoming extremely selfish because it's about your self-preservation. You're not thinking of the bigger picture because it's hard to put yourself at that bird's eye view when you're in the throes of it.
Well, yeah, and I think that is the thing about, I guess, human nature that we kind of have to come to terms with. Do we succumb to our base desires, which is just survival of myself and being selfish, or can we kind of, like you say, take that bird's eye view and take a step back and go, okay, let me try and help as many people as possible, and in doing so, that will help me as well. Like,
Right.
what is it, like all boats rise when the tides rise, or
ri-
something like that? Rising tides
Rising-
bring up all boats, something.
Oh, now you messed it up. No, I don't know what it is. Rising tides lifts all boats or something like that.
Something like that. I mean, I don't know if that's a really great analogy, but the idea that I'm thinking of is like, you know, if we all could kind of think collectively and not individualistically.
Oh, I got it right. A rising tide lifts all boats.
So yeah, if we all just work together and use our knowledge, pool it together, then we could help everyone be in a better situation, including ourselves.
Had he shared it from the get-go, mostly everyone could have survived what was one of the most disastrous and difficult challenges of the batch. Also, can I just digress here for a minute? This one bothered me. I just didn't really like this challenge. I get that it was a cool visual and interesting concept, but the challenge just didn't work for me. It didn't seem to be based on a playground game like all the others.
I agree.
The game makers cheat by turning off the lights
I
midway
agree.
through, which
Yep.
directly counteracts their whole everyone has a fair chance
Right,
model.
yeah,
Putting
yeah.
people into a specific order felt unfair, and then
Yep.
the way they conclude it with a giant explosive finale puts everyone's lives at risk.
Exactly.
It was just a good spectacle, but also something that felt kind of cheap. All right, rant over. Of course,
I agree with that 100%. Thank you for pointing that out, because I also, like, I felt that in the moment. I'm like, this is totally not winnable. Like, there's no strategy to it. It's not
Yeah.
fair at all, like the other games where there actually is some kind of strategy involved and you actually have a chance. This is like just guessing and you could just die.
Yeah, and then as soon as the VIPs are like, this is not a fun game anymore because this guy knows what's up,
Yeah.
then they're like, okay, cool, we'll turn off the lights. So it's kind of going, oh, you know, it's all fair until the rich people come in and they're not happy, and now they want to make it not fair.
Yeah.
of course, there is the elephant in the room. Every player who dies adds more money to the prize pot, but that's the wrong way to think about it. Let's assume that, like we see in the show, there are 6 rounds, and that there will be at least 3 games that require 50% of the players to be eliminated. This would be games like Tug of War and Marbles, where some amount of death is guaranteed. That means that your portion of the prize pot is already going to be sitting at a hefty 800 million won, 668,000 US dollars, even before any additional deaths from the other games. If you're someone like Gian who has loan sharks to pay off, a family member surgery
I
to
love
pay
the
for, and
animation.
an ex-spouse to fight in court, that amount should cover everything while still leaving you with enough to make a down payment on a new house. There's also an economic principle called the law of diminishing utility, which states that if someone is down on their luck, having an extra $80,000 is a huge, massive deal. If you're
Sure.
Gian, that money has a lot of use. But if you're already standing to win over $600,000, another $80K on top is certainly nice, but no longer is the life-changing sum of money that it once was. Once your basic needs are met, as income increases, you gain a correspondingly smaller and smaller increase in your life satisfaction.
Yeah.
Get a slightly nicer car, a slightly nicer house. Therefore, it's not something that's worth risking your life over. This is surprisingly a topic that the last episode focuses on, though for spoiler reasons, I'm not going to play the clip. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that any winner of the Squid Games shouldn't have that money, but what I am saying is that there's a tipping point where each additional dollar earned is less and less worth risking your own life to achieve.
That's a very interesting analogy and thing to bring up. I didn't know about that. What's it called again?
The law of diminishing utility.
That makes a lot of sense. You get accustomed to, even like just in practical sense, you get accustomed to a new lifestyle and whatever. And $10,000 used to be a lot, especially when you weren't making too much and you had $10,000 on your American Express credit card. Like that debt feels like a lot.
Yeah.
And then, but like later on in life, when you're making a lot more money, $10,000 doesn't seem like that much compared to what it used to when you were like like 19 years old.
Right.
Spending money frivolously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is very, very interesting. When you're told you'll make $100,000 on something, it's like, oh my God. Or you could make $105,000. It's like, well, it doesn't feel that much different.
Yeah. It's like make $100,000 and live, or $105,000.
Yeah.
And potentially die.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, why even?
Dollar earned is less and less worth risking your own life to achieve. And by just playing the game with survival as your first priority, you wind up with plenty of money to change your situation while also minimizing your risk of losing that life, so, you know, you can go on and spend it. Obviously,
Sure.
there's going to be rounds where you're forced to fight for your life and eliminate other players. But if you don't have to kill people, then don't. Never thought that's a sentence I'd have to say, but here we are. But there is one
Right.
big concern that you have to be aware of. Clause number 3. At any point, the players can vote on whether or not to end the game. If the majority of players want out, that causes the game to end not just for them, but for everyone. In order for you to walk home with your money, you have to complete 6 games. But people will probably vote to escape the games if they're put into a position where they're almost certainly gonna die. So with that in mind, let's go back to the glass bridge. Unless you have outside knowledge of what tempered and untempered glass looks like, the game is generally decided by random coin flips. And by coin flips, I mean the first few people in line coming down with a mild case of death for the good of the group. In the challenge, there are 18 sets of panels. Worst case
Right.
scenario, you have 18 deaths. The best case scenario is 0 deaths, with the person in front correctly guessing every time, but fat chance there. As player number 3 correctly estimates when he's 3 panels in,
Probability that I'll get everything right is
You got this!
1 in 32,768.
overall, if you're first in line, you have a 1 in 262,144 chance of survival. The average here is 9 deaths, with the probability distribution curve basically looking like a bell curve, which you can see using any binomial visualization tool. You
Too much
have one
math.
of those handy, right? Using that probability chart, we can see that the first 6 people in line are basically screwed, having less than a 5% chance to survive, while the people going 13th and later have a 95% or better chance to survive. But even if you're trapped in the game with no calculator, it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power to determine that you do not want to be one of the first 9 people to play.
No.
So you, as a smart player, hopefully chose not to be one of the first few people in line, but even if you're feeling good about your odds of survival, remember that for you to actually make it across the bridge, you need the game to happen. Let's say that the game has been reduced to 13 players, and you're lucky enough to be 13th in line. That's good news for you. You have 95% odds to survive. However, you probably won't make it across the bridge for the simple reason that there are good odds that the first 7 people in line are gonna nope the heck out of there, going with a majority vote to end the game, meaning that even though you had the ideal position and would have won, you get nothing. Good day, sir. And you see, this is exactly what could have happened in the show. 16 players remaining, knowing that the first 9 were likely to die, they could have voted to end the game right then and there, and because they were in the majority, clause number 3 would have been enacted. Game over.
Right.
Now let's take the alternate scenario. Let's assume knowledge was shared and everyone's cooperating. At this point, there would have been 2 50% elimination games, Tug of War and Marbles. In the best case scenario, 456 players would have been reduced to 114. By the time you get to the bridge, even if every single one of those first 18 people in line got cold feet, they wouldn't have enough votes to end the game. And instead of most of them being wiped out, we'd expect an average of 9 of those players, or 8% of the 114 player group, to get eliminated. 92% of players surviving to get past this game, pretty darn good odds. In short, your chances of survival increase the more people are around you to take the blows. So now that
Yeah.
we've spent a lot of time talking about what not to do, what can you do to increase your odds of surviving in Squid Game? Apart, of course, from playing nice with your fellow competitors. Well, the first one is obvious. Don't panic. Red light, green light is
Right.
an easy game, and the timer
Yeah.
was very generous as long
Yeah.
as you stay calm and you use
can
your
just
time
walk.
wisely. Also, just like with the 3 clauses, make sure that you're paying attention to the game's rules.
It's just different when you're thrown into a precarious situation. Have you ever done gymnastics? When you're practicing on the beam that's 6 inches off the ground, it's easy.
Yeah.
The moment you're on the beam that's 6 feet off the ground, it's really, really hard. It's the same exact practice, the same exact movement, but the consequences are a lot bigger. So it's actually not 6 feet off the ground. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You know?
I was like, I don't know what balance beams you've been on.
No,
but-
it's not 6 feet. It's like 4 feet
4
or something.
feet,
Like
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Still, nonetheless, like the principle still applies, which is when the threat is higher, the same thing's harder to do for most of us. You know,
Sure,
understandably.
yeah. And the problem was, though, like he said, that most people panicked. Once people started dying and they
Yeah.
realized that they were for real, that's when everybody started screaming and running and not doing the thing. But really, what you should have done is just gone, breathe,
Right.
stay still,
Right.
and let's not move, everyone. and we'll all get there together. A lot more people could have passed that game if they hadn't panicked.
Right.
For instance, we see Songwoo cheat at marbles by misdirecting his partner, but his method for collecting 20 marbles doesn't actually involve breaking any of the rules that are established by the game master.
Player who manages to take all 10 marbles from their partner wins.
Repeatedly throughout the series, we see players presented with an obvious solution, like the needle in the honeycomb game, and they just assume that because this is the default or recommended way to play the game, it must therefore be the only way to play the game.
That's
but
right.
rarely is that the case. You can lie to your partner and take his marbles. You can lick your candy until the sugar melts. The problem everyone falls into is that they assume certain rules are there when in fact they're not. In the Glass Bridge episode, we see that Gion was able to take a single marble as a keepsake with him, which ended up being relevant in that very game. A second, third, or 20 more marbles could have come in real handy with that one. Also with that Glass Bridge, the rules just state that you have to jump from panel to panel.
For this game, you will guess which one of the next 2 tiles is the tile made of the stronger tempered glass, and only step on those across the 18 pairs of tiles.
But nothing said that you had to land on the middle of each panel. Landing with your feet on the supporting bars holding up the
No one
glass
tried.
is going to reduce the weight
Yeah.
on that glass, ultimately helping resist the breakage. Is it breaking the rules?
No.
I don't know.
No.
Honestly, I don't think so.
No,
but
it's
here's
not.
the thing. You know that you're going to die if you choose wrong, so why not try pushing the edges of the
Sure,
rules just a
yeah.
little bit when there's nothing else to lose? By taking
Absolutely.
a moment to think about the actual hard rules of the game and not automatically dismissing unconventional solutions by assuming that anything else isn't allowed, you might actually be able to find a loophole that allows you to survive. Lastly, use your surroundings. Not only are the walls giving you clues, but your clothes, the bed, the springs, and the mattresses, all of it could potentially prove useful. Were you given a glass bottle yesterday as a part of your meal? Instead of breaking it to try and shank your opponents, why not bring it with you to your next game? Tug of war. Throw it onto your opponent's platform to throw them off balance, or put glass under their feet. Maybe cut the rope so neither side loses. Another thing that I want to get off my chest, this is just a terrible idea.
I think that doll senses when you move around.
That person in front of you is gonna stop at times that you don't expect or anticipate. If they get shot, that bullet might go through them and pierce you, or their dead body might knock into you. And instead of focusing on the game itself, you're gonna be focused on another person as you run down that field, which is not where your attention needs to be. In short, your number one strategy to surviving the Squid Game should be to ignore Sungwoo.
I think you would put us at a disadvantage if we just choose one. You think?
For being the smartest person in the room, all of his ideas are dumb. Yes, except for the tug of war game. Anyway, if you happen to meet a well-dressed man in a train station who invites you to throw squares of paper at each other, now you know what to do. And that's to say no. Because unless your desire to win more than $500,000 is greater than your desire to have more than a 12% chance of surviving the next week of your life, it's not gonna be worth it. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory.
I thoroughly enjoyed this.
That was a lot of fun.
The animation was thorough. I loved it. I love the animation on this because of all of the breakdowns that we've watched so far, this definitely had the most creativity in it in terms of like taking the actors or the characters and animating their faces, animating himself, throwing in like all these like graphs and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a breakdown of the show per se, but it was just kind of like, okay, this is an alternate way that you could have played the game.
I think it gave you a deeper understanding of the show as well, though. Like it wasn't without that.
Sure,
You know?
yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a, deep dive
It's not like New Rockstars.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's different.
Yes.
I get what you're saying, but I still enjoyed it overall. And
Yeah.
it definitely makes you consider certain things, IRL things.
That's the thing too, right? I think he's absolutely right. As people, I don't know if it's like human nature or if it's programming, but we've been taught, I suppose, to obey the rules. And so, yeah, when you're in a situation and the game says, okay, well, here's a shape and here's a needle, and you're like, oh shit, how the hell am I supposed to get this out using just a needle? Like, I'm gonna die for sure. When actually the rule doesn't state that you only have to use that. It just says that you have to, You're looking at me because you're like, oh, Achara, you're such a sheep. You always follow the rules. I know that's why you're giving me that look, Jabby.
We'd still be at the Thai consulate if it wasn't for me not following the rules.
It was an Indian
Or
consulate.
the Indian,
but yes.
whatever. You know what I'm talking about, goddammit.
Yes.
So-
and you've never let me live it down.
No, because that's a really valuable lesson, which is you have to consider outside the box. You have to consider what other possibilities are in front of you rather than what's just being presented to you.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
And that is why I would die in Squid Game. Like I can sit here and theorize and analyze with the rest of you, but much like Dude said at the end of this, like just say no. And I know myself, and no.
Okay, so on that, because he was saying that you had a 12% possibility of surviving the game and winning, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's all well and good, but if you are someone like our main character, maybe your chance of survival outside of the game was 11% or less.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, you still get to see your mom, you still get a chance at seeing your kid, but you're gonna get your organs harvested. You signed over your life basically to the loan sharks. I think his chances of survival outside the game was less than 2%, honestly. Like, how is he gonna get out of that? And like, if he runs, they'll track him down, you know?
Sure, yeah.
So, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe his chances of survival were higher and I'm just... Anyway, I thought this was cool.
This was really great.
I think my favorite part of it was the law of diminishing returns or whatever it
Utility.
was. Diminishing utility. I thought
Yeah.
that was the coolest part of this video because that was like a real gem to hold on to. You don't really think about that. If you're told you can make 100K versus even 115K, it's like that. It doesn't seem like that much different when it's like it's all a lot of money, you know?
Yeah. It's like, well, for Gi-hun, 80,000 or 100,000 is going to make a huge difference in his life. But then like 44 million, at that point, you're like, well, I'm super unhappy.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to do? My mom's dead.
Yeah.
All these other people died. I'm so depressed and I don't want to have anything to do with that money.
Right, which is exactly what happened in the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought this was thorough. I enjoyed it so much. And if you guys haven't already subscribed to Film Theory, there's a link in the description below for the video we just watched. Be sure to check that out and hit subscribe to him from there. Subscribe here as well, please. Bell icon, all notifications, and vote this up to let YouTube know you enjoyed what you watched. I'm Jabby Kuwait. This is
Achara Cook.
Peace out.